Thank you for joining us today. We are going to have a presentation today by Jody Gale from Utah State University titled Teaching U.S. House and Senate Staff About Natural Resources in Utah. I'm going to be moderating. My name is Ashley Longmore. I am an extension agent in Northern Utah in Box Elder County for Utah State University, and also the vice chair for the Western region for the NACAA Natural Resource Aquaculture Committee. Let me give you a little introduction to Jody, and then we'll let him get started. Jody A. Gale is an extension faculty member at Utah State University Cooperative Extension, where he has worked for 36 years. He has a split appointment for Sevier County, approximately 60% as a traditional ag agent, providing agronomy and horticulture programs. He also has an area assignment for Central Southwest Utah. Approximately 40% of his time is spent providing ag-related economic and community development and rural development and natural resource public land issues. Sorry, Jody, I kind of stumbled over that one a little. I am going to just kind of moderate and watch for questions, and then at the end, I will ask Jody any questions that come up in the chat. So take it away, Jody.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully the right one comes up. How does that look on your end?
Looks great.
Okay, very good. Very pleased to be with you today. As Ashley mentioned, I've kind of got two jobs. Many of us in extension, I think, work two jobs and get paid for one. But it is an interesting assignment. I've had a rather unusual extension career, maybe a little bit untraditional, that I spend a lot of time with elected officials and public land issues, and that's what I'll be spending most of my time about today. First slide here, I hope it transitioned. To kind of start off with, I really pose a question or make a statement. Extension faculty are change agents. I remember being a new agent long ago and trying to get my mind around what a change agent would be. And a change agent is basically to change things through education, through the extension of research-based information from the university, to help people take that information, incorporate it into their lives, make better decisions to improve their lives, to improve their farms, to improve their businesses, whatever it may be. And so education becomes that mechanism for making those changes. I remember learning first and thinking about who our extension students are. And that's really the primary question I would pose to everyone today that's with us on this webinar, or who may view it in the future. So we traditionally think of our students as being youth, especially in 4-H programs specifically. We've got Clover Buds, we've got 4-H members, Team Council, and many others, other youth that we work with. Adults that are our students, families, farmers, ranchers, homeowners, business owners, and others. And under that other category, I would really propose that elected officials, legislators, members of Congress, and staff are also extension students. I've got a question mark, an exclamation point there, and I think many times we don't think of those who are in elected office other than the county commissioners or county supervisors, which we always work closely with. We don't traditionally think of those others as our students. They're certainly not our traditional students, but I would pose that they are significant leaders that are in key positions to cause change. And when there's an opportunity to teach them about issues, they're in a much better position to make decisions that will have positive outcomes. Sometimes those decisions and what's at stake can be very significant. Leaders come from, you think about our federal government, or even state governments for that matter. You have the legislative branch, which is our legislators or U.S. Congress. We have our executive branch in states, that's the governor's office, and in the federal government, that would be the presidency. You also have appropriations, and I'm just realizing I didn't list the judiciary here. That's probably even another part of our students that we could perhaps consider, even though the program that I'll be describing doesn't have a judiciary type audience. But kind of our prime directive in extension, if I can use that phrase liberally, county faculty, those of us that are in the field, connect the land-grant universities to the people. And I've highlighted both ways. We're to extend that research-based information from the university out to the people to help them and educate them in all of our audiences. And then it's also our privilege to take their needs back to the university to discuss ways on how we can better meet those. One of the very first lessons I learned as a brand new agent are the importance of partnerships. The program I'm going to be discussing today is a partnership with AOGs in Utah. AOGs, or associations of government, as they're known. And I'll explain in a moment a little bit more about who they are. These AOGs here in Utah provide a classroom and students to hold, and the students are significant elected offices. These non-traditional students are, as I've mentioned, positioned to be able to cause change by adopting policies, establishing or changing laws, and appropriating funding for programs that are designed to address critical needs. And Extension is well positioned to be able to participate in that process in helping to provide the educational portions of the agendas that result in helping to educate those that are in position to make decisions. This partnership between land-grant universities, counties, state, and federal government is critical. Here in Utah, Extension has a symbiotic relationship with two of the AOGs in the state, the 6-county and the 5-county, and they represent 11 of Utah's 29 counties. So this is a map showing the AOGs in Utah. There's 7 of them. The AOGs that I primarily work with under the auspices of my area assignment are the 6-county AOG and 5-county AOG in South Central Utah. So a little more about who they are. AOGs are not a regional government. They're a voluntary association of counties and city government. There's an Interlocal Agreement Cooperation Act passed here in Utah over 50 years ago that authorizes these relationships. And as I mentioned, we have 7 of them in Utah, and they were established in the early 70s. These AOGs are led by a board of county commissioners and mayors. They have operations and programs. The 6-county AOG that I probably work the closest with, they have more than 100 staff. And their budget is significant, in the range of $4 to $6 million annually, dependent upon their various appropriations and programs. And the purpose of these AOGs are to provide many state and federal programs that individual small rural counties are unable to provide from themselves. One of the counties in the AOG that I work closely with here at 6-county only have 1,500 people in their county. And so, take a county of that small, it's very difficult to provide Meals on Wheels and various HUD-related services. And so there's many of these programs that the AOGs provide. Some examples that I've listed here are aging services, Meals on Wheels, various housing programs, heat and weatherization, economic development. There's many programs addressed that come from the federal government to help address with poverty, and then of course natural resource issues. So the objective of this particular program that I'm discussing is really to educate elected officials, and I'll be mostly concentrating on congressional staff. And these these students are in key positions to cause change or to make change happen. And extension helps with the educational agendas and the educational role. Granted, this is a very politically charged environment, and it's difficult to walk that line in between education and advocacy that I'll address as we go through. But this is a great opportunity for Extension to be able to establish relationships and close working relationships with Congress to be able to address high priority local needs and issues. And of course, staff members who are our students better understand those local needs. They're in position to work with their bosses, who are congressional staff members who sit on the U.S. House Natural Resource Committee or the U.S. Senate Energy and Natural Resource related committees. And by educating those staff members, whether they are staff to the committee themselves or staff to the members who sit on those committees, that is where the opportunity to change votes occurs, literally, as they better understand issues that are important to the local elected officials here in Utah. I will exert a caution here that's a very thin line between education and advocacy. And extension is not really, it's not our role to, especially in the political environment, to wade into the advocacy. But there is an educational component related to advocacy and related to lobbying where we have safe ground, where we can work within that realm in providing education. But it is absolutely imperative to have support from university administrators and make sure that they know what we're doing and what we're involved with, and have them involved in our committees or have them involved in our work with the AOGs and these respective programs. So here's a list of some of the programs that I participate with the AOGs in providing. This congressional briefing I'll be discussing more about. We do a similar event with the Utah legislature, which includes the governor and lieutenant governor and their cabinet and staff. We provide leadership training and growth summits and various other events and committees. And we always try and stay within that realm of education. So the objective of the congressional briefing specifically is to educate staff and members in these key positions of the U.S. House and U.S. Senate that I've mentioned. Once they understand the issues better, they're in a position to make favorable votes on issues that have direct implications for public land management in the West. Here are some of the issues specifically that we address: resource degradation of public lands associated with wild horse and burros, forest management, including catastrophic wildfire. I think if you're watching the news, we've got wildfires that are raging in the West this time of year, some in California right now. We also have the timber industry, grazing, both ranching on public lands as well as private lands, federal land ownership. As a statistical point, 68% of all of the land in Utah is administered by federal agencies. Federal agencies including the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, national parks, monuments, etc. And some of the programs that I won't spend a lot of time talking about regarding taxation is it's difficult when you have such little private land in your county to be able to provide or have resources to be able to pay for schools, search and rescue, which is a big problem here in the West. Some of these programs include the payment in lieu of taxes and secure rural schools. And it just briefly mentioned that those programs are provided by federal agencies to help offset the lack of ownership of private land and the ability to tax. These programs provide significant funding for our school systems. I'll mention one of the neighboring counties only has 3% private land within its county. Other issues that we're addressing on this congressional briefing are mining related, oil and gas, wildlife associated with it, particularly the sage grouse. We also have 5 national parks in Utah. Zion National Park is an example of one that has, I think the last number I heard was somewhere around almost 5 million visitors a year. So the national parks is absolutely overwhelmed trying to address the massive visitation that's receiving, as well as deferred maintenance issues to try and keep the park infrastructure going. Other issues including access through the right-of-way issues, wilderness study areas, roadless, and the list goes on and on. So the way this program works, as I've mentioned, our primary audience are these key members of U.S. Congress in their respective committees. This congressional briefing started over 25 years ago, and it was designed for the congressional staff and members in Utah's delegation. We repurposed the event in 2019 to present, where we focused specifically on the members of the U.S. House and the U.S. Congress that I previously described. Since 2019, we have combined between the 5-county and 6-county AOG, 11 of Utah's 29 counties. An executive planning committee provides the background training, and that includes us at USU Extension. We not always, but the elected officials go to Washington, D.C., extend personal invitation to various Democratic specific congressional offices. Many of our Republican members of Congress, both here in Utah as well as nationally, are not our primary audience. It is typically the Democratic offices where much of the education is needed regarding these public land issues. We drop in on them in their offices. We make appointments there. We also issue email written invitations and so on. We spend over a year preparing for the event. It is held during the August congressional recess. So we've just recently had our 2024 congressional briefing, and we're in the middle of debriefing and getting ready to begin planning for the next year event. We provide travel scholarships so that the lack of funding or having to use their own budgets for travel associated with this event are addressed. We raise about $75,000 here in Utah. That money does not come from any private sources, so that it meets Congressional Ethics Office for Congress, meets their approval. So the counties put in about $2,500 a piece that are involved. We have a number of state agencies, the Governor's Office of Public Land Policy, Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources, Tourism, National Parks, and others all contribute to provide that resource. And then we provide airfare, rental cars as needed, per diem, hotel rooms for each participant comes from that travel scholarship. And then we provide a 3-day tour beginning in August, usually the second week in August, as an experiential tour through the state of Utah. I keep hitting the wrong button to advance slides. Here's just a few photo archives of some of past participants. We've, Senator Hatch is no longer in Congress and has passed. Mitt Romney is going to be ending his term soon. We have a number of legislators from Utah and who have participated, not legislators, congressional members of Utah's delegation that help with this event. Let's see, I kind of addressed this. I put a duplication of slide there to review some events, but Moving on, this is a map of our tour. It's not a great photograph, I'll apologize, but if you can see my cursor, we kind of begin in Utah. They fly into Salt Lake City, and then we travel south through much of the state over the 3 days and end up in St. George. And many of them fly out either from St. George or from Las Vegas. This is an example of some of the past participants that we've had come from both professional members, legislative assistants, policy aides. We've had commissioners, the national president of the National Association of Counties, and some of their staff also participate. So we have a very diverse group of staff members that come. Just like to highlight since 2019, we've had 69 members of respective House committees or members who serve on those committees. We've had their staff participate, which does not include those from the county professional organizations such as NATO. They fly into Salt Lake on typically a Sunday. We have a little welcome gathering that evening. The day one begins frequently either Governor Cox or Lieutenant Governor Henderson provide the welcome at a hotel in Salt Lake. They come and get acquainted, have an opportunity to rub shoulders with Utah's leadership. Continuing on down through the state, we spend a significant amount of time at a wild horse and burro facility. This is a private ranch that contracts with the Bureau of Land Management that holds over 1,200 head of wild horses or burros that are taken from the public lands on the western deserts. The population numbers have exploded and are causing a lot of ecological damage to our ranges. And so there's a program that the Bureau of Land Management has in place to be able to remove or gather some of those animals off from those ranges and hold them in private facilities for the rest of their lifetime so that they can reduce the pressure on natural resources. This gentleman standing on the fence is a staff member, and I'll come back to him in a little bit as I talk about results. Probably literally the highlight of the trip is we take the group to the mountain ranch with Stuart and Karma Johnson, their children, Jared and Ginger, and their children. So they have 3 generations. They have an opportunity to spend the evening and to tour private land and to learn about ranching and grazing in the West, particularly with all of the public lands we have here. A lot of our livestock operations hold permits from the Forest Service or Bureau of Land Management, other public agencies to run cattle or graze cattle on public lands for a portion of the year. And so they have an opportunity to learn about that and to have an enjoyable evening. It's an extraordinary event. This ranch is in a mountainous area, which is just has gorgeous views. We have great food. We provide ATV safety training there in preparation for an ATV ride. They also get a chance to ride horses, many for the very first time, who have never ridden horses or ridden an ATV before. And they especially have an opportunity to get to know a ranching family personally and to learn about their operation. And frequently they are checking back and visiting with the Johnsons on public land issues, even long after the congressional briefing is passed. Day 2, we provide a ATV ride. It can be a lot of fun and it can be a little bit hazardous too. We typically will have upwards of 50 ATVs for the members of Congress staff who are participating. This gentleman here in the middle is one of our legislators. And here's a staff member from a former staff member for Senator Mitt Romney. doing the driving, and they have a chance to play in the mud a little bit. During that event, we take them to a place called Powell Point, which overlooks hundreds of thousands of acres in central Utah. It's not very far from Bryce Canyon. And they learn more about the programs I've mentioned previously, the payment in lieu of taxes, the Secure Rural Schools funding, the National Environmental Policy Act, also a bit about the Antiquity Act that presidents used to declare national monuments in Utah, which is, and other Western, well, anywhere in the United States for that matter. But that's those have been very contentious programs. And this is an opportunity for elected officials to be able to provide that education. This young lady speaking here is Celeste Malloy. She's the newest member of Congress from here in Utah, and was just recently reelected in a squeaker election, and she'll be she was appointed for her first term, and she will begin in our second term in January. Issues that are shown, we take them to, as part of the ATV ride, they see prescribed burning operations, timber operations, where they have an opportunity to learn about forestry issues associated from a timber operation standpoint. These are small family-owned companies. They aren't large corporations here in Utah. Also, during that first or that second day, we take them to Bryce Canyon National Park. We take them on a pretty nice hike where they see some of these iconic features in Bryce Canyon. Get a nice trail ride. We also go to Zions National Park, and they have an opportunity to wade in a place called the Narrows, not far from Angel's Landing. Park superintendent spends a half a day with the group and talks, and it helps them understand about the issues the National Park Service is trying to address with deferred maintenance and the crush of visitation that's occurring, not only at Zion National Park, but all of the national parks in Utah. The members of the Utah delegation are often involved. Former congressmen and current congressmen are helping us out. Burgess Owens is currently serving in the U.S. House. And Representative Stewart, who Celeste Malloy has recently filled his position, is often our teachers as part of this event. We very literally use the members of our Utah delegation, and Utah's governor and lieutenant governor and others are the presenters and teachers to the participants in this event. During day 3, we feature other parts, natural resource issues in Utah, such as coal mining, sage grouse habitat, and the effect of threatened and endangered species designations in Utah. Extension is often involved in many of these presentations. At this point, before I get into results and outcomes, I will pause just briefly. At this point, any specific questions that anyone has that I could address before we talk about the results and outcomes? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on. So some of the things that are a direct outcome of this event is, as I've mentioned, this is experiential education for Congress. These relationships between our elected officials and staff members of these respective committees, and the staff members developing relationships with people who live in Utah, the Johnsons, for instance, the Daltons who run the sawmill. It's an opportunity to develop those relationships. We have changed a few votes in Congress on natural resource related programs. A couple of years ago, the we're not taking credit for all of these votes and funding increases, but we have provided a significant input into those. The Bureau of Land Management recently received an increase of $20 million to help address the wild horse and burro issue. Here's the story. This gentleman is a staff member who served the Natural Resource Committee. He was not staffed to a member who serves on the U.S. House and Natural Resource Committee. He was staffed to the committee itself. And his responsibility had been for the wild horse and burro problem in the West. He had been in that position on the House Natural Resource Committee for about 5 years, and he had never had an opportunity to travel to the West to actually see a wild horse and burros. And so this was his first opportunity to get up close and personal and seeing some of these wild horses in their holding facilities and better understand the contracting method that the Bureau of Land Management enters into with private owners, not only here in Utah, but a number of places across the West and Midwest where these animals are housed. This gentleman is with Bureau of Land Management and is over the wild horse and burro program in Utah for the federal agencies. And it gave this gentleman, this staff member, an opportunity to better understand the issue. Later that year, this photograph was taken about 3 years ago. Later that year, he worked with the committee, and because of his experience in Utah and better understanding of the wild horse and burro issue, many of the Democratic members of the U.S. House Committee, which would customarily vote against these important issues in the West, changed their vote and appropriated an additional $20 million for the Bureau of Land Management to be able to help address that problem. National parks received an increase in $6.5 billion across the entire national park system, in part because of the education we helped provide. A lot of education, a lot of discussion about the National Environmental Policy Act, which governs the planning and decision-making processes that are used by federal agencies in the management of federal lands. And we have spent a lot of time teaching them about those issues. From the evaluation standpoint, here's a few questions and some ratings we've received back from those who participate. How well was the event marketed to you? How well was the information communicated to you for your preparation to attend? So a little over 77%, if you look at it that way, or 7.75 out of 10 felt it was good. Do you feel that you were hearing from the correct experts and presenters? Their high marks there of 8.5 out of 10 said they heard from the experts and good presenters. Was the content of the event relevant to you and the work that you do? 4.5 out of 5, and again, note the change in the scale here. 4.35 out of 5 reported that it was relevant to them. Payment in lieu in taxes that we've discussed. How supportive would you be in working towards permanent ongoing funding or increasing that funding? 8.6 out of 10 were affirmative there. The problem with PILD is it's an annual appropriation instead of an ongoing appropriation. And that's a challenge every year that Congress meets in funding that effort. Two other items here. After learning more about active forest management, how supportive would you be in working towards increasing active forest management? 8 out of 10 said they would be. And the overall experience out of the event, 4.9, felt like it was a great experience out of 5. Again, note the change in scale. The event is full of adventure and not without its risks. We've had occasionally an ATV accident. This was one of our accidents this year. I'll maybe address this a little bit more later in the presentation. but a young congressional staff member who was very inexperienced. Thank goodness as she went off the edge of the road, she bailed off, and the four-wheeler wasn't so lucky as it ended up in the bottom of a gully and had some significant damage. But thank goodness she was not hurt in the accident. We've had a couple of minor injury-related accidents, and so this event is not without risks. I will mention that part of the reason that Utah State University Extension is a sponsor and a supporter and not a co-provider is to be able to keep the liability for these types of accidents and injuries that could happen squarely with the elected officials and the congressional and the Association of Government. They do have insurance that covers these events. In previous events that did not involve our current reframed event, these were back when we were providing the congressional briefing for just Utah members of the staff. We did have two injuries, one serious but not life-threatening, thankfully, on associated accidents associated with this event. But that's the downside. The plus side, as I've previously mentioned, is the education that's occurring. I will just very briefly mention about another program that's not the primary objective of this presentation, and give you just a little bit of exposure to that event, and then we'll be wrapping up here shortly. We do a similar briefing only to a different audience, and that is the Utah legislature. The primary key positions are Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, committee chairs of the Ag and Natural Resource. Very same approach to the congressional briefing. We were trying to educate those in Utah that are in key positions to be able to make decisions. Including in this list are the executive branch, including the governor's office and his staff. Very similar focus. The AOGs help provide these events. They're not necessarily specifically to deal with public lands. They are also addressing infrastructure needs in rural parts of the state. Capsulized in this picture are all 5 members of Utah's congressional delegation who participated with us a few years ago. The governor is often in attendance, shown here on the left, as well as the heads of a number of departments of state government. And a number of Utah legislators. Here are 2 of our Southern Utah legislators, and a number of others that receive that educational experience. We have also provided local field trips for the governor and his staff, Department of Agriculture, featuring energy-related issues in the state. Natural resource is just one of the components of that. I'll briefly discuss this as some of the impacts from this additional event. Same things are established as far as providing experiential education for the members of the legislature, for the executive branch, and the members of the governor's cabinet. Established communication and working relationships have increased at all levels of state government. It's been a number of years ago, we received $750,000 appropriation to be able to provide a socioeconomic analysis for the entire state of Utah. We're in about the 6th year of an ongoing annual appropriation of over $950,000 for water and how to better conserve and use water in Utah. This is divided between ag water and urban water. In teaching and providing research and extension specialists and others to work within this important area. Utah is the 2nd driest state in the nation. Nevada is behind us at the driest state, and this funding is used to conduct significant research both on campus and in the field to better serve our agriculture clientele and our homeowners. Recently, well, been maybe 5 years ago now, that's recent. We've received our over $2 million in ongoing funding annually for the Rural Online Initiative. We received this funding the year before COVID struck, and we had a program up and running to teach people, especially in rural areas, on how to make a living in various manners by doing online contracting through the internet. Been an extremely successful program that's now been adopted by a number of states across the country. AOG funding to help them with their programs, another benefit to help with meat processing, which is a problem affecting all of the livestock industry across the United States. These are just examples of some of those outcomes and impacts that have occurred because of the legislative briefing, which is patterned after our congressional briefing. With that, I will kind of end the main part of the items that I had prepared today, and I'd be happy to address any questions. Seeing none, I'll consider that an end of my presentation for the webinar, and I'll turn the time back to you, Ashley.
Thanks, Jody. If there are any questions, you can come on the screen or type them in the chat, and Jody would be happy to answer them.
But Jody, was it pretty easy to recruit staff to come to the program?
Actually, it is quite easy. The first couple of years, we did a lot of direct knocking on doors, going into congressional offices in the buildings, in the Senate building and the House building there on the Hill in Washington, D.C. But once they there's a tremendous grapevine amongst the congressional staffers. And so once we refocused it from our old audience to the new audience in 2019, we had the hiccups associated with COVID. We canceled the event in 2020 due to the COVID epidemic. But that grapevine has served very well. And we have usually more people want to attend. And we are a little bit selective in who we let come. We don't just provide a scholarship for everyone. We've kind of focused on those key positions within the House and Senate. And so if they're in a lesser role as maybe an assistant, an assistant to assistant type thing within some of the committees, we will not provide them a scholarship, but anyone that's like a chief of staff or a member of Congress, their legislative staff members, some of their communication people, those are at the top of our list. So we usually have maybe one or two will have a flight problem or something that will cancel at the last minute, but we do limit it to 20 per year is the number that we hope for. And often we're somewhere between 17 to 19 members since 2019.
Did you have good support from the university to reach out to Congress and everything, or?
Yes, very much. The position that I'm in here in my area role, I've been working closely with elected officials for over 20 years. And, anytime you start working with members of the Utah legislature, members of Congress, it really makes the university nervous, makes the vice president nervous. And so there's that fine line that I mentioned between education and politics. And so really concentrate on the educational aspects. One of the photographs that I had in the presentation, I didn't mention it, but Dr. Ken White, our vice president of university extension and also the dean of the College of Agriculture, has attended some of these events in the past. They're aware of what the events are. They're aware of how the agendas are put together. They're very supportive. Extension provides 2 travel scholarships along with other agencies. So we provide $5,000 worth of travel scholarships every year, and that's been in place for I guess 4 years now. That's the university is very committed to it.
I'll just go ahead and jump in then too. I had 3 questions and you answered 2 of them, Jody, and what Madeline said. So that's good. Great program. I think the biggest question that I have is, I know you're dealing with a lot of federal level legislators and also some of the federal level programs that you're showing them in terms of Bureau of Land Management and federal supported programs. Any chances that you guys would expand this or do this on the statewide level? Because I know that, being with state universities, that's a lot more familiar with them, here in New Jersey with Rutgers. Everybody on the state level is familiar with Rutgers. I'm sure the same thing with Utah State. So any chance of doing it like with your state, congressional or assembly people or whatever system you have?
Yes, we actually have, and the last few slides of my presentation where I was talking about legislative items, that is for the Utah legislature. So that is in Utah, our legislative body is called the legislature. I know in other states they might be called the assembly of the state, and so they have different titles around. But yes, that is oriented specifically to the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, of the Utah Senate, and of the Utah House. So that is an associated program that we do patterned after what we've been doing for our congressional briefing. I will say that we have not held it this year. We've had a little bit more difficulty with participation in getting our Utah legislators to attend that. I will kind of maybe bounce back a little bit, maybe take your question and going a little bit beyond, Steve. We've kind of concentrated on staff to the U.S. Congress committees and staff to the members who sit on those committees. Our dream is to have the members themselves come, those who are congressmen or senators from their respective states who sit on those committees. And so we're in the process of doing some revisions to see if that's possible. It's very rare to be able to attract them into another state to look at these kinds of issues. And so we've developed such a reputation for CODEL. And this event for Congress that we're providing is called a CODEL amongst the staffers. And everybody's so impressed with what's going on. We're hoping we may be able to use that to leverage to bring the members themselves out. Now, bouncing back to the state, we've had the governor come and participate as one of our teachers in this event for those congressional staff members. Likewise, he's almost always involved. The lieutenant governor's almost always involved when we host this for the state legislator. And so, we have 29 counties in Utah, so we have those respective House members and Senate members. And, we've been able to get 5 or 6 along with the governor's office that come. And it takes a lot of work to put these together. The event that we hold for our Utah legislature is just a one-day event. It's not a long 4 or 3-day event like what we do for Congress. And we don't provide a travel scholarship for our Utah legislator members. They're on their own dime. They have budgets and funding. And so, that's something we're kicking around on maybe how to address. But yes, we're trying to educate all of those who are in these key positions, whether in Congress, whether in the state of Utah, and even the presidency for that matter, if I can, that sounds awfully grandiose, but we have had some of our commissioners who have met personally with, when President Trump was in office, he requested a delegation come from Utah and talk about some of these issues, such as the Grand Staircase National Monument and so on. And so we're our elected officials are very much have a heavy focus on educating others that can help with these issues. And to be very to the point, this is all about changing votes. But we have to be very careful about our role and extension on how we do that. We're not lobbying for the vote. We're just trying to provide the education foundation that would perhaps put them in a give them a better understanding to consider changing their votes. The push for changing votes is provided by the county commissioners and the governor and others, which is their role, not ours.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jerry.
You bet. It's good to see you, Steve.
It's good to see you. I know you did this presentation at one of the AMPICs a few years ago, and I heard it then too. And I'm still amazed that you're even able to get, you know, just the handful of people out there, you know, with the busy, you know, staff, you know, requirements of working in any sort of political arena. So, I mean, you should be really proud of what you're doing, because it's unique from what I've seen in other states that there's not a lot of people who are doing that work. So good job.
Oh, thank you. And I'll just reiterate, it's really fun to be a partner with the AOGs on this. The extension could not do this. Really, we would not be successful if we tried to provide this as our own event. But where we are in partnership with the Association of Governments and the elected officials specifically, we've been educating them over these years, and they have seen the wisdom of trying to do this type of education for those who can cause change above their positions, the Utah legislature, Congress, etc. And it's been a lot of fun to be involved in helping them provide this event.
There are no questions in the chat. So if there are no other questions, we could wrap it up, I suppose.
Okay, very good. It's nice to be with all of you today.
Thanks everyone for coming and joining us today. And thanks, Jody, for your presentation.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.